There is love in this place. Whenever two or more of us gathered in His name, I found the world is all the same. There is love.
A pleasant good evening to all, and a warm welcome to LBW Radio on this beautiful Friday evening. Want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. Those of you who are viewing via Facebook and also YouTube, we appreciate every one of you. We'd like to encourage you to stay tuned because right after my voice, we are going to have Level Up Your Marriage with Brother Paul and Sister Racquel Blake. And tonight, there is a couple in the studio with them. I am looking forward to this, and I hope that you are in the same position that I am. And at the end, we pray that you will indeed be blessed. So at this moment, I turn you over to Brother Paul Blake as we bring to you tonight breaking out, sorry, level up your marriage. Brother Paul. Your mic seems to be a little low. Your mic seems to be a little low, Brother Paul. For some reason, we can't hear you again.
Hear me now?
Yes, yes.
All right. So we are here tonight. Level up your marriage one more time. And we have with us tonight two special persons. And I will just allow Raquel to come on at this time and introduce them. We are in for a very lively discussion tonight. And as always, you can type your comments in the chat. You can ask your questions, and we will engage you. And we will look, as we look forward to having a very wonderful discussion tonight on Level Up Your Marriage. Wherever you're listening from, whether in Africa, in the Caribbean, in the US, wherever you are, just join the conversation. Level up your marriage. Raquel, over to
Yes,
you.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you, my handsome husband. Uh,
Oh, Lord.
yes, this evening we continue our discussion about intimacy. It only takes a spark. And we thought it useful, helpful that we invite a lovely couple. You know, you'll soon see them. They are my friends for over 20 odd years. Steve Leslie and his beautiful wife, Natalie Leslie. So we have them joining us this evening in the conversation, leveling up your marriage. The topic, intimacy. It only takes a spark. They have been married for 18 years. You know, they tell me they are no longer children; they're adults, and they believe that marriage is a covenant. It's a covenant relationship, and they are adamant about that, and that's their mantra, and so it guides their direction, how they live their life, and how they navigate their marriage. And so you will hear more about them as they engage us, as we share in a discussion about intimacy, and it only takes a spark. So let us join them, or let us have them join us now. Steve, we affectionately call Steve, and Natalie, Leslie, welcome. Welcome to Level Up Your Marriage. We are happy that you're here. I see the joy in the faces, the sparkle in your eye. You know, we talk about the spark. And so we are happy that you're here to join our conversation about intimacy that only takes a spark. You know, what does intimacy look like for you? Uh, it's going to be a discussion. We have persons joining us on the platform, questions, comments. So let's jump right in. Over to you, Paul.
Okay, so we have been discussing the subject of intimacy, and the last time we were on, it was an engaging discussion. We got so many different comments from that session, and so many questions coming from it. And we really look forward to having the second part of this discussion on intimacy. So we looked at a number of things the last time, and we really were diving into why is it that intimacy is such an important thing in a relationship, for its survival. And there are a number of things that we mentioned, and we looked at the fact that there is a difference between intimacy and intercourse. One leads to the other, but they are not the same. And we also look at the fact that intimacy looks different for men and women, right? Though it's one word, we don't necessarily look at it from the same way, because what is important for men may not be important for women, and what is important for women may not also be important for men. So we want to begin from that space tonight, and I'm going to even invite Steve and Natalie now, because I want to hear from both of you. What does intimacy look like for you? What does it mean for you and your relationship? Go ahead.
Let- And first, thank you, Raquel Paul, for the invite. We're excited that we're here, and we are just thankful that we're able to share in this discussion. Honey, you want to start?
Oh, yes.
That is it.
Being willing to defer to important.
First, first lesson intimacy. Defer to your wife.
I like that. That sounds like a batsman when he's been bowled a fastball. You just leave it alone.
Let her set the trend, and you make sure you manage the trend and follow.
That's right. That's right. You are a good husband. Natalie, what does intimacy look like for you? What does it mean for you?
For me, it means giving up something in order to receive, and that's something that is given
Mm-hmm.
for me. Time, the time that he wants to spend with me, not
Mm-hmm.
bedroom, the time at the kitchen sink washing the dishes, the time he spends dropping off the kids at school, going to the grocery store, coming back with flowers.
All right.
That is intimacy for me.
Mm-hmm.
That
Okay.
factor is just very, very important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Steve?
Intimacy for me is when I get home, or before I get home, I get a call or a text that says, "Honey, how are you doing? This morning you didn't look as happy, or you looked a little concerned about something, and I wanted to let you know that you're loved." So the kind words,
Yes. Yes.
the note that's
You-
when I'm traveling, and I travel a lot, and I open my bag or my suitcase or my carry-on, and there's a love letter in there, and there's a note.
Mhm.
Or I'm going to work and I bring my lunch to work, and when I open my lunch container, there's a note inside here that says, "Honey, you are awesome. I'm so happy you're my husband, and have a good day."
Mhm.
Wow. You're getting it right, Natalie.
Yeah, when I get to work and I warm my lunch, and persons come into the lunchroom and it says, "Wow, that smells good. Where did you buy it?"
Yes.
Home cooked.
Yeah.
I'm happy and proud that I'm married to a wonderful woman who knows me, understands me when I make mistakes. She for,
Yes.
and she doesn't hold a malice or grudge
For too long.
for too long. Thank you, honey.
All right. Yes, Natalie, put on the disclaimer. But it's interesting though because we would have this conversation so many times, Raquel and myself, in different forums, and it's interesting that no matter how many persons we talk to, if for both male and female, it kind of looks the same in terms of what is important to us.
Mhm.
And the fact that we have so many problems today in with intimacy in marital relationships is amazing because it is really the same information that is that is being handed down over and over again, but we spend so much time on these important facets because it's not something that there are many books written about intimacy and love and all of that, but it's really the same thing that is coming back. The whole idea of being in tune with one another, having concern for one another,
Mm-hmm.
the whole idea of the value of spending time with each other, the concern that you should have for your partner, and I like what Steve mentioned, that when you go home, well, not home, you're traveling, and there's a little love note
Mhm.
in your suitcase, and that makes a difference. And
Uh,
Natalie said when you go to the grocery store, you carry back some flowers. No chocolate, Natalie.
Oh, I am not a chocolate
so
person
knowing
per
that as well,
se.
so not a chocolate.
Right. Exactly.
Just to add, if the custom officer find your love note, it's even better because the look on their faces is like, okay, maybe I should have opened that up.
I can imagine.
Oh, contraband before. There has been
Yeah,
contraband.
or a special a special garment inside of the envelope, scented and
Oh Lord, help us now.
makes you want to come home quicker.
Quicker.
Yes,
Yes.
sir. You want the trip to be over so you can come
Yes,
home.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, I'll tell you. No, let's segue a little bit here because wanna let us look at some of the challenges or the misconceptions that we have
Mm-hmm.
in terms of why is it that so many Christian marriages lack intimacy. And
Really?
yes, man, that's what the research says, that
Oh,
there's the percentage of Christian marriages that lack intimacy runs somewhere between 65 to 70%.
wow.
And and you find also that the longer persons are married, especially from a Christian perspective, intimacy tends to wane
Oh, because Jesus is coming?
because Jesus is coming soon. So I want to start diving into some of the things, some of the factors that will cause this lack of intimacy. And the first one I want to look at, and this is a very good place to start:
Mm-hmm.
misconceptions of sex and sexuality.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times the way we view sex as Christians, especially when we become new in the faith,
Mhm.
it doesn't give lend much for intimacy at all,
Yeah.
because it is almost as if we become too holy for sex and sexuality. And these things a lot of times are not discussed in the relationship. Our view of sex and what happens in the bedroom is left wanting a lot of times. But when I go to the book of Songs of Solomon, and I tell people try to put some meanings to Songs of Solomon that has nothing to do with Songs of Solomon, right? It is not any allegory of God's love for Israel, as I've heard people explain. The book of Songs of Solomon is a book of sex, straight up, right?
Practical.
Practical sex.
Practical sex, right? The book of Songs of Solomon. is describing the relationship between two lovers.
Mm-hmm.
And it describes a sexual, intimate relationship between two lovers. That is what is there. Right?
Oh,
So I don't draw the allegory part. No. So
Natalie was
what?
saying something, Paul.
Yes. Go ahead, Natalie.
so the lovers are on earth.
Yes. Yes.
Up in
Yes.
heaven.
Not. Praise the Lord, sister. Not up in heaven. So, in other words, when I look at it, what it says to me is that God expects us in a marital relationship to have physical connection, and not only physical connection, but
Right.
healthy physical connection,
Yes.
frequent physical connection,
Mhm.
right? And it begins with a particular state of mind and understanding of how much the physical relationship is not only important to us, but important to God, because it is what makes the relationship survive,
So if I can
right?
jump here, Paul,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we are a little late if it is when we Christians get married that we start having the conversation. Because if
True, true.
we translate this to our youth and our children, then they're going to grow up with the misconceptions
Mhm.
and it's going to show in their relationship. So when they don't see that intimacy between parents, when they're grown,
Yes.
then they didn't know how to treat a woman. When if my son doesn't see dad bring home flowers, or my daughter doesn't see that, then they're not going to get that when they go into their relationship. They're not going to know what to expect and how to
Yeah,
treat.
very true, very true.
If my sons don't see daddy washing the dishes, then they won't know that that's part of how you live and you give, and that's part of intimacy as well.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we
Yeah,
have
that's true. That's true.
to start teaching our youth and our children what Christian intimacy is all.
And if I may jump in as
Yeah.
well, we have done
Jump
this,
right in, man.
we have done this all our marriage. We have a bath every
Yeah.
morning, and we
Mm-hmm.
in the bathroom together. Our kids know, and sometimes they'll come to hear if we call their names, so they know
Mm-hmm.
we take a bath every morning, and there may be one or two mornings if something happens, and but 99% of the time we take a bath together and we are praying naked together. And intimacy doesn't start by intercourse. Intimacy starts from the small thing, bringing God, as is a covenant. And when you
Yes.
other skin naked, like God made you, even if you have
Yes.
issues and you have little angst, it goes away when you're naked before God and you're praying. So
With your partner.
with your
Yes.
so it makes a big difference what you model, as Natalie was saying, to the kids, so they understand that intimacy is not something that is
Just for midnight in the bedroom.
hiding. It's not, as you say in the songs of Solomon. It's about hiding. It's about progression. It's about all the pieces,
Celebration.
celebration, and a part of the
Yes.
celebration, prayer. Part
Yes.
is
That spiritual
yeah,
piece.
and loving your spouse, loving yourself, and being in that moment where God, you're before God, the one who knows every part of you.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so I like what you said. Intimacy is a celebration,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and I do agree. Raquel, you want to come in?
Oh yes, I'm very excited when I heard Steve and Natalie talk about having that bath together every morning or most mornings, because that is also a part of the intimacy.
Hmm.
It's sending a message to both of you. It's sending a message to the children, about the importance of the connection, of touching each other. So intimacy is not only physical; there's an emotional side to it. You
Hmm.
know, there's a mental side to it, because without the connection, without the playfulness, without allowing yourselves, to be vulnerable with each other, it will be you'd like you're bumping into each other in the mornings, but you're looking forward to it. you're excited about spending time together as you prepare for
Hmm.
the day and even as you end the day. So it's I like that. I really appreciate that comment that you shared it, because that is also being vulnerable with each other. And of
Yeah.
course, you're also being vulnerable with us too, because you're sharing that private part of you and how it makes a difference in your marriage. So congratulations, 18 years and counting.
And you run home much quicker when you've had a bath in the morning together and all back home.
when you, when you remember what was left behind, eh?
And
But
that's the eyes for in
yeah,
other.
go ahead, Natalie.
And so you find that that also leads to fidelity in the marriage, because there's no need for you to be thinking and lusting after somebody else.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You know what you have seen, and men are visual creatures. That's how God made them, and He had a reason for doing that. And so, yes, make
Eyes have seen and ears have not heard. Eh? But I want to bring something into the conversation though, because in our present world, and again, this is something that Raquel and I would have had to deal with, in our counseling practices with persons, the external things, the negative influences that a lot of times we bring into the relationship that inhibits the level of intimacy that we can enjoy.
Hmm.
And um, we would want to take it for granted that as Christians we take it for granted that we shouldn't be engaging in some things. But unfortunately, there's a huge influence of pornography even in Christian marriages.
Hmm.
And that in itself is not only destroying marriages for persons who are not Christian, but also destroying marriages for many Christians.
Hmm.
Because I mean, we live in a world that is seriously over sexualized.
Yeah.
And everything really becomes a point of sex. If you are advertising painkiller, there must be some sex involved. And we find that this kind of influences even our belief system many times. And what do we bring into the space, into the bedroom, right? And there's a text that many of us usually misunderstand, take out of context, to have it mean things that God never meant. In Hebrews chapter 13, when it says marriage is honorable and the bed undefiled, so that in no way suggests that anything that it does not suggest in any way, shape, or form that anything is allowed in the bedroom because we are married. As a matter of fact, the text actually means that we must keep the bed pure. That's what the text means, right?
Yeah.
So we have to look at these influences that we often allow into our space many times that will also help to inhibit the kind of intimacy that we are supposed to enjoy in our marriages. So pornography, and we can even go further because there's also a discussion, and I am on the fence somewhere where a lot of it is concerned. The use of things like sex toys and all of that, whether or not it is allowed, whether or not it is godly, whether or not it is sinful or not sinful. No, I am not going to play God with anybody, telling anybody that it is wrong or right, because there may be a place in the relationship for different stuff. But the question is, how far is too far? How far do you go until these things replace your intimacy in the relationship? How far is too far until you allow these things to take over the space that you are supposed to be enjoying, right? And again, as I said before, we are seriously influenced by media, by um, by our friends, even in various discussions. So I want to hear um, Raquel and Natalie and Steve. I want to hear your take on that.
One of the things that we have to look at is healthy communication.
Mm-hmm.
We get married, we're adults that get married. So what we do in our bedroom is like, okay, that's what we do between God and us. And when you're in a covenant relationship, so it's between yourself, your partner, and God.
Yeah.
That
Mm-hmm.
and so boundaries have to be set, but it's
Yes.
you have to talk about and discuss. So you learn and understand your partner's love language. My
Mhm.
love language, words of affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
are looking so just the little things. Just once he gets those words of affirmation, he feels really good about himself and healthy about himself. So if he has a little bit of a punch now.
Oh, so you're telling the entire Facebook world.
But this is going abroad, you know.
that
Careful, careful.
that he has a job and that he is being well fed.
Okay.
No, you just have to go ahead and communicate clearly. So when it comes to
Yes.
like pornography, then that is a discussion that as couples that you have to have that discussion. And some place they say you do you, whatever. Adults, you do what you want to do in your marriage, in your bedroom. But you have to have healthy boundaries as well.
Yes, that's true. That's true. That's true.
Talking about your relationship, knowing what is important in the relationship.
Yeah, I
And
agree. Yes, Steve.
I may add as well, you have to remember what is the focus of whatever external thing you're bringing in. If it becomes
Mm-hmm.
focus, then that's where many persons lose their, especially those persons who want to bring something else in. Now, if you bring whatever it is, a sex toy or whatever you want to bring in that's external, that's not your wife, not the other person, then if that becomes the reason why you're in that relationship and it becomes the primary focus of intimacy, then you have a big problem. And that's where it becomes into something else where you become, it's a drug. You become dependent on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
What,
agree. True,
what
true.
God wants to do is be dependent on Him, and that's why it has to be a covenant marriage. If
That's right.
persons, if God is there with you, and whatever you do, you're able to look to your God and say, "I am
Thank you.
thank you, and I'm okay."
Mm-hmm. I
Then
agree. I agree.
you have to again know who is in that marriage. If you're just there, the two of you, then whatever you bring in becomes your third party. But God is
Oh,
our party. God is
yes.
the triad. He's part of that relationship. And
Yes.
therefore, what we do it before the eyes of God. Even though
Yes.
on some days I'm thinking, okay, God, you're seeing everything.
Yes.
How am I going to
Yes.
when I see you?
Yeah. Uh, Raquel, before I bring you in, there's one thing that always occurs to me also is that intimacy is a process of learning,
Yeah.
Yes.
because where you start is not where you will end.
Mm-hmm.
So you may both persons may come into the marriage not even understanding what intimacy is, and even the role that it plays in the development of the relationship. But if we are committed to each other, then it is something that we learn over time. And the more we learn about intimacy is the more our relationship will grow. The problem a lot of time comes in is that sometimes we are so unwilling to learn about intimacy and the role that it plays in our relationship. And unfortunately, Steve, I we find that problem especially among men more than even women, right?
Hmm.
And it has a lot to do with the fact that many of us are really not as emotionally intelligent as we should be
We're
to
socialized.
understand even the connection. Yeah, so yeah, socialization to understand like the connection
Mm-hmm.
between a woman and her emotions
Mm-hmm.
and her need for intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Not sex.
Yes, and I think Natalie alluded to the fact that as men, we are our intimacy begins from our visual, right? What we see, but a woman's intimacy begins from her emotions, what she feels, and all of that is learning. So I also think that we should understand the process and also trust the process.
Yep.
Raquel, let me hear you.
Well, our experts, Steve and Natalie, have said it all. um, of
Somewhat
course,
right.
I know. I'm just kidding. I know that if I have a voice too, but I'm agreeing with what you guys have said before. Uh, and the element of being open to learning, I think that's a big thing, because in the same way that we go to university and we're excited about learning about our profession, and we take it on, we study it. It's important that we also begin to study our spouses, their needs, what makes them tick, what
Mm-hmm.
what brings that connection. How should I communicate with Paul so that he feels loved, he feels appreciated, he feels respected? We talk about love and respect, the element of respect for the men. Not that respect is not important for women, but it is higher on the needs for men, and
Yep.
also on the other side for women now, where we want to feel loved, the element of affection and communication. And so it's important to understand the different needs that we take into the relationship, or that comes with us, as that makes us different, men and women. So I definitely, um I'm a big advocate for being open-minded, for being having a growth mindset, where as I'm being married for 17 years, how we started in the first year is definitely different from where we are now,
Yep.
and it's because we have been open to learning. We're open to even just being uncomfortable with certain situations, but we're saying part of intimacy involves being vulnerable, allowing your spouse into that space where sometimes you feel uncomfortable. You talk about having a bath together. Some persons, what, I don't want you to see my big belly. I don't want you to see the scar on my leg or the scar on my shoulder. Some.
Mhm.
So
It has to
let
start.
me go again.
That has to start early. What we did is from we got married and went on our honeymoon. It's a practice that we started out with from day one. So even now in our house in the mornings, the three kids were like, "What are five doing in here in this one bathroom? We're not at the hotel. You have your bathroom," and they all find their way.
Exactly. Exactly. So
No privacy.
So we have threatened them to say, you grow up and you get married, want your wife or your husband, we are going to invade your space and because that's what you have done to us.
you know,
Has to be taught and
Oh Lord.
have to
All
really
right. Remember for those our audience, where you are, that you can comment, you can ask questions and engage us as we have this very wonderful discussion tonight. Uh there is also the importance of having a spiritual connection because spiritual disconnection is also an also helps to inhibit intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I find, and I find that when persons are not on the same plane, there is going to be a disconnect.
Disconnect.
Yeah. There is.
And our spiritual connection is very, very important. How we view our relationship with God is an extension also of how we view our relationship with each other.
Hmm.
Yes.
And so intimacy is going to suffer if both persons are going in two different directions.
Yeah.
Because Amos asks the question, can two lie down together unless they
Yes, they
agree?
agree.
Can two walk together unless they agree? And he speaks there to the importance of having a connection. And I remember at the initial part of the discussion, Steve, I think one of you had mentioned that you pray together. Um, and if you pray together, then I'm going to assume that you also worship together,
Yes.
right?
And
That
well, with the kids,
you,
done it
in
separate.
in other words, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just saying we do it separately as well as with the kids. So it is something that we do together as a couple, but we also do with the kids as well.
Hmm.
And modeling this relationship that God is important. He is a central part of, for example, I'm going to work with the kids in my,
Yeah.
Natalie is going to work as well, and one child is reading the Daily Bread while I'm dropping off at school. Natalie is on the phone in the car. So as a family, we're having devotion while I'm driving them to school, and Natalie's going to work. Yet we're all on the phone having devotion while we're going. So it's a connection that starts from start of the day, and when you get home at night again before we go to bed, we have another devotion again with the kids. And it may look like the kids are a part of it, but it's also part of that connection with each other because they came out of us, so it's a part of the connection with each other as well.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. And it adds to the quality of relationship that you have.
Mhm.
Right. It's very important. Anything to say on that, Raquel or Natalie?
Yes, just to say, we have to not just talk the talk, but show it to our kids that this is what is important. God is very important, so that's why we put a priority on having family devotion, family worship. But just to maybe segue, just to add to it, another important piece of intimacy has to do with money. If
Mm-hmm.
not,
Yeah.
Hmm.
the intimacy will go down.
Ah,
You know, if he's not surprised with a few dollars in his wallet,
Yes.
the intimacy is gonna go down. So money is also very important in how we use and spend money.
and it goes back to when we're doing marriage counseling. Part of what we told our counselor is we need to talk about sex, we need to talk about children, and about money and religion, because those are four pieces which will tear you apart.
Mhm.
Get married and they don't have a conversation about money
Yeah,
and
that's true.
what
That's true.
and how much
That's
you
true.
tithe, and do you give an offering along with the tithe, and then all of that gets bottled into resentment, and you can't create intimacy when there's resentment, when there is feeling that you know what,
Yes.
uh it's your money and it's my money, and
Or
I,
you're hiding some of it, or you're withholding some of it.
yes, you're hiding it.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it goes back
Yeah.
to understanding that.
Yeah, that's true. Very, very true.
You see, this discussion about intimacy, it's so broad, and it's all encompassing, because when people hear the word intimacy, maybe their minds go off to just the physical aspect of it, but there's emotional intimacy we talk about in terms of bringing God into our relationship. We talk about understanding the specific or the unique needs of the female of the husband of the wife, the unique needs of the husband. And it just it takes many elements to have great intimacy, you know and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know we want to get the word out there that intimacy is possible. God, who created marriage, God who created this wonderful institution, he empowered us with everything that we need, but we have to be willing to do some work. We have to be willing to make the commitment. And Natalie talk about not just talking the talk, we have to be walking the walk. We have to be involved, we have to be active in making this happen. And when we have children, they have to
Yes,
also
I agree.
have to see, we have to model it for them, because we want them to carry on the great legacy that we have in our own marriage, and do better than, and possibly do better than we are doing.
Yeah,
But
true. True.
they need the foundation. They definitely need the
Yeah.
foundation.
And if that as well, and we have to be willing to become vulnerable, but to forgive ourselves when we mess up, when we make mistakes.
Yes, that's true. That's
And
true.
intimacy again,
Very true.
if you can't be vulnerable, you can't forgive yourself. We all make
And
mistakes.
forgive the other
Can't
person.
forgive the other person. You have
Mhm.
to be able to do that, and it's
Yes.
a walk. It's like being a Christian. It's not one. That's it, and you're done. It's a daily walk, and you mess up sometimes. You say something in a harsh way, which when you look back, you realize I shouldn't have said it that way. And one of the things that we learned early in our marriage is, I am sorry, I was wrong. Please
Please
forgive.
forgive me.
I am
Yeah.
sorry, I was wrong. Please forgive me. And you don't have to win every battle because you can win the battle and it's a cold night.
Ah, I, I like that. You can win the battle, but
But
it's a cold night.
oh my,
Every-
I like that. I think I'm going to write that down to use in counseling. I like that. I like that. All
Um,
right. So we want to look at
there, the
the
cameras,
Cameroon, Steve.
oh,
cameras
wait one
on.
second. Not sure why we're.
To look, all right, you just fix it. We'll continue.
Yeah.
The whole. I want to look at the the needs of men and women, the different needs that we have, and we just want to look at probably just the top five of men and the top five for women, and we want to have a discussion around these needs. Men need to be respected and celebrated. Men need men have romantic needs, sex. A big part of for men is really sex. Men need to feel desired and wanted. Men need adventure, adventuresome, fun, and imagination, sex, and you notice all of it come back to a whole heap of sex. And men need men need to feel validated. All right, when we put on a good performance, we need to hear that was the best performance in sliced bread. So,
That is true.
but but the question is,
That
and
is, Paul, you need to emphasize that. That is true.
yes, and it goes right across the board, right? No matter how many married couples that we will talk to, these things will always come back. So I want to take the men for men first, and this is where I'm going to bring in the wives now. Raquel and Natalie, why do you think these things are so important to men?
Well, one of the first things that I would say, that's how God made men, in terms of the physical component. But when the scientists look at it now in terms of the other side, it also has a positive impact on on his well-being. It makes a positive difference
Mm-hmm.
on the man's well-being, his state of mind, his energy level, his mood. You know, and it's in while preparing, I was reading about the importance of celebrating our differences. It's important to not just make a big deal of, oh, he's too energetic, he has too much need for sex. It's important we celebrate our differences because these differences add value to the relationship, add spice to the relationship,
Yeah.
you know. And so, I'm not
Yes.
sure, is that the answer you're looking for?
You know, yeah, I want to even carry the discussion a little bit further than that because in my experiences, one of the things that
Okay.
I pick up many times in counseling person and even in having discussions is that oftentimes the man's need for sex is sometimes used as it is weaponized. Let me use that phrase.
Hmm.
Yes. And you said it right, Raquel. It is part of how God made us. It's part of our physiology, to use a big word. And it must not be weaponized in the marital relationship. Because it is a part of us that we have let me not use very little control. It is a natural part of us. That let me use that. Right? Because you don't want to get the impression that we're just out of control. Right? But it ought not to be weaponized because it is the creator, it's God who made us that way, right? But we have to also understand the place that it holds in the relationship and the fact that not because we are sexual beings as men and highly sexual that we must now use this as a means to get our way with where our wives are concerned and not also look after the need that they have, right?
Yeah, Steve
Because
want to jump in.
there must be a balance. Yes, Steve, go ahead.
Well, I'm agreeing with you, Paul, that finding that balance is extremely important. And we often don't see that happening because men tend to be more domineering.
True, true.
And because men tend to be more domineering, and if they have not been taught how to listen. So, one of the things that I've learned over the years is to listen to understand rather than listening to respond,
Yes, yes.
because we
That
tend
is
to
so important.
respond without understanding, especially when it's a woman who's, and sometimes it's not what is said, it's the body language of what's not said and
Yes, that's
how it
true.
is said.
That's true.
Mhm.
That's true.
So learning how to read your spouse's body language,
Yes.
Yeah,
and
that's
being
true.
able to preempt what is likely to be going on, and if you're not sure, just ask, and finding that balance where you're not the one who seemingly is the center of the world. Because remember, it
Yes.
is a
Yeah,
shared
yeah, true.
relationship.
I agree. Very much so agree. So
And so I
somebody
would
asked
add
before.
that we
Yes, go
talked
ahead,
earlier
Natalie.
where we're talking about intimacy. And so a male's need for sex is there, yes, and so is that for a female too. However, if the male just
I don't
expects
want to
that
touch
it is
that
each
yet.
time he gets into the bed that's going to happen, then that's not the right way of looking at it
Hmm.
because they too need the romance starts from you wake up in the morning all day, the calls, the love letters, the texts, showing compassion, helping with the children, and
Yes.
also helping with the
Hmm.
laundry. All those pieces become important. All those contribute to intimacy as well.
And just a touch, just a gentle touch. You
The
don't have
power
to
Yes.
of
say
the touch.
anything. Just a
Yes.
touch, just a look,
It's hi.
or
Very,
just
very true.
mwah.
Very true.
It does not
Yeah,
require to say anything oftentimes.
I
And
agree.
I have learned
Very
it
much
over the
so.
years. Sometimes the less you say, the better it is.
Yeah. You know, I was reading something the other day, and it was looking at the importance of physical touch among
Mm-hmm.
couples, and it said that one of the most powerful elements in a relationship is not sexual touch but intimate touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
and
underutilized. It's underutilized.
and and, and it is highly underutilized.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read the statement, I said, man, we have gotten it so wrong. Because what and by the way, it is not just a male problem, it can also be a female problem.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
When we look at many times, we kind of overemphasize the importance of sexual touch, which is very important. But it actually begins in the touch of intimacy. And what you mentioned a while ago, Steve and Natalie, the whole idea of just touching each other, embracing each other, hugging each other, just walking past your partner and just brush them for no reason at all. Give a slap here and there on the
Mm-hmm.
that slap we're talking about,
Yes, sir.
right?
Holding hands.
holding.
Holding hands in public.
Stroking here and
Mm-hmm.
the head, you know,
Does
holding the chin at a
does
slight
Wigs
angle
and
and
Grades
looking into
qualify?
well, just make sure that the wig is in place.
It's turning up
We
again.
have, we have some
Carrying the
questions.
handbag.
We have some questions that come in.
Carrying the handbag.
That way,
I'm not sure what Paul will
we
say
have
about that
some.
one, Steve.
How should a husband respond if he's been starved? And this is where communication comes in. Because
Okay,
one of the
Paul, if
things
he's
I
being starved, if he's being
yes,
starved,
if he's
he's
been
not
starved.
providing money for the woman to buy the food to prepare it to feed him.
That's what starvation is talking about.
Me not think of that the starved there.
No,
Let-
don't think so either.
and I'm glad this question came up because one of the things that this points to is that if you are being starved sexually in a marriage, it is an indication that there's some breakdown in communication.
Yeah.
The starving is not the root cause. There is a root cause that
Yeah,
has caused the
it's
starvation.
narration. Right.
Hmm.
In Jamaica, we say when shop lock,
Yeah.
right?
Pot
And
turned down.
yes, and so what it points to is that there is a barrier that needs to be overcome. Some
Yes.
communication is not taking place. There's some underlying issue that needs to be addressed. So for anybody on the platform who is having that kind of issue in their marriage, you have to get to the root cause
Hmm.
because there is some issue there that needs to be addressed, and it could be any amount of issues. And by the way, it's not only communication because many times we look at things like communication and so forth, but it could also be a physiological thing, right? It might be, and let me give you an example. I would have heard or had persons complain and wives complain that because it's not only wife lock shop. Sometimes husband decides say no, and you'll find that happening especially when men are experiencing erectile dysfunction,
Hmm.
where rather than saying that this is the problem, they actually bring other things into the sphere that create problems, right? Because one of the things about men are very what word am I looking for when it comes to that part of their anatomy, boy, men God that like is
Proud.
judgment day. Right?
Proud.
And when the plumbing not working, it creates a problem.
Don't blame the plumber.
And so, so there are a number of factors that can, and so you have to, and this is where communication comes in. You have to be
Mhm.
open, you have to be vulnerable, and that can only be developed over time.
Yeah.
Over time,
Trust.
when you have a healthy relationship, a trusting relationship, right? So get to the root cause, get to the problem, because the starving is not really the problem, right? Where does public
Public.
affection comes in? Very good question. Where does public affection comes in? Well, anywhere in public, even in church.
Yep.
Many of us as Christians have a problem even showing intimacy in church
Hmm.
because we think that the space is so holy that there's no room for affection.
But just sitting
But
together and putting your hand over your wife's shoulder, or
Hmm.
exactly, exactly.
that's part of
We
intimacy.
spoke some weeks ago. We spoke some weeks ago, Steve and Natalie, about a brother who we had at church here in Jamaica. He's dead now, died at 93 years old,
Wow.
and he and his wife they were married for over 50 years. But one of the things that was so impressive with him, his name was brother Walker, is that when you see that man handle his wife, you think that they are 16 years old. When he brings her into the
Tenderness.
building, he holds her hand, and you can, and even when he sits beside her in church, you can see him reach over and him stroke her hair or him stroke her hand. He comes into the building, he pulls out her chair for her, and he's not going to sit down until she's seated. Right when he comes out of the vehicle, I mean, he has to be driven to church. When he comes out of the vehicle, he's going to stand up by her door until she comes out, and that was him naturally, right? Is not that was not something he was pretending. That was something that you could see came out of a relationship that grew, right? And that is what intimacy is, right? You don't forget. As a matter of fact, before he died, he lost most of his memory, and there are two things that he didn't forget. He didn't forget his wife, and he didn't forget that he was supposed to study with people to make them Christians. Two things he didn't
Amen.
forget, right? And that can only happen from someone who is willing to grow in a relationship with somebody else. So if we talk about intimacy is about experiencing growth. Who wants to take that?
That is
All
well
right.
said, and may Brother Walker's soul rest in peace because he showed the younger generation and the young people of what true intimacy is.
That's true.
To
As a matter of fact, when I was before I got married, I remember I went to their house and I sat and had one of the best conversations I've ever had on marriage with both of them. Very, very lovely people to sit down and talk to. And they would tell you in their relationship that it was not easy. They didn't have everything was
Nothing
not
wrong with
always.
it.
Yes, they told you that they had the challenges like everybody else and everything, but they grew in love. They grew in their relationship, and it was just something very beautiful to see.
They had growth, Paul, and
So
that's it. Plants
yes,
die
that,
unless they grow.
that's
Plants
right. Very
die
true. Very
unless
true.
they grow.
And
So
And
if
and
there's
in
no
order for them to
growth,
grow, they have to
it's
be
going
watered.
to die. And growth requires
That's right.
lots of effort,
nourishment.
nourishment.
Yes.
It requires
Water and nourishment
protection.
and all of
It
that.
requires a
Yes.
lot of things. God has given us the plants and
Yes.
so many things in nature to show us how we should treat each other.
ah, definitely,
Very true. Very, very true.
definitely,
Very, very true.
definitely.
And with that said, we want to move now to the fear of sex. A wife's top five love needs: unconditional love and acceptance, emotional intimacy and communication, spiritual
Spiritual
intimacy.
intimacy.
What else she needs? Encouragement and affirmation
Mhm.
and companionship. Right? Well, if this was not important to anybody, I can tell you who this is important to. Racquel Blake. If you're looking for a definition of for these things, look for you probably see Racquel name behind beside all of them. If
Wow.
yeah, and I can tell you, Steve and Natalia and our audience, it was not an easy lesson to learn, but I'm learning.
That's good, Paul. That's good.
There's some growth is taking place, right?
Yeah, some growth is taking place,
But
and that's why we can sit and have these kind of discussions with such comfort and everything, because it is a process of growth. So unconditional love and acceptance for women is very important, very very
Hmm.
very important, right? Women don't like criticism or unwanted criticism, and even if criticism is going to come, it must be criticism that is given in love, must be constructive criticism,
Yes.
right? That unconditional, you have a woman's heart forever if you can show her that you love her unconditionally.
Amen.
So, in practical terms, Paul,
Hmm.
after you've pushed out the three babies and you have on the weight, and you're not the size you were when you started out in the marriage.
Yes.
When you try
Yes.
different types of braids and different types of wigs, and some of them may not look the best, may not be your favorite, rather than criticizing and say, okay, here is some money, you can just go see your hairstylist. It's been very practical.
yes,
The food may be
Yes.
salted today. You just drink some water and say, thank you, Lord.
and thank you, honey. And thank you, honey.
Something may get burnt. You say it is burnt offering time. Hallelujah.
Make an altar.
You see, as Natalie
So
and
you hear it from the woman.
exactly. But one of the things that's coming out too is the element of humor, where we
Yeah,
can laugh at ourselves, we can laugh at each other, and that laughter is good medicine,
it is.
and
It
it
is.
definitely
Hmm.
it definitely
Yes.
will add to level of intimacy in any marriage.
Yes.
Laughter is powerful.
And if
Yes.
I may add as well, as you mentioned laughter, I got married to my friend.
We see that.
I
Yes.
like being in her company. I like being in her presence, and therefore we can laugh about things. And sometimes we can look back at what we have done and say that made no sense. Why did we do that? Why did I even think or said that? That was just Nick. And we have a good laugh
Yeah.
at each other, and that is so important to build intimacy. Somebody you can grow not just as your lover, but also as your friend.
Indeed,
Yes.
indeed.
In one of our discussions, Raquel, we had discussed the whole idea of I'm trying to remember exactly the term that we use. But what it comes down to is that yes, we are married, but we still like each other.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you have a lot of couples are married, but they don't necessarily like each other. They kind of they tend to endure each other rather. But, but you find that marriages that are healthy, the two persons still like
With
each
each
other.
other.
Yeah.
Even
Yes.
after spending so many years together, they still like each other.
Yep.
Have you ever heard before how some wives and husbands talk about each other? You wonder how is it that two of them in one house?
Yep.
When you ask a wife or husband about about where is Steve? Why you never know, she must be there. You understand where I'm going, right? But as couples, for intimacy to grow, there must be affection, and you must like the person that you are in love with, because you can be in love with somebody but you don't necessarily like them either.
That's true.
Right? And I like what you said a while ago, Steve, that both of you still like to be in each other's company.
Mhm.
Yes.
And that's important. I like to be in Raquel's company, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we look forward to the times when we go out with each other. Raquel don't do much planting, but she will come outside and look at me while I'm planting. But so it is not a relationship of endurance. It's a relationship where we enjoy each other's company. Right?
Yes, where you thrive.
Raquel don't watch much TV, Steve and Natalie. But every now and again she will come and ask me what is going on the TV. I may have to explain everything from detail and all of that.
You know, you
But
telling untruth on me. You telling untruth on me now.
Paul, I understand. Paul, I think
so
men
you
are
can relate.
made to watch, and women,
Weather and
and
TV.
yes, so I understand. I,
Okay.
and for me, I have to be in the moment, and when I'm explaining, it's like, okay, I'm gonna miss something.
Yes, by the time you don't explain the movie, half fight gone already.
Yeah.
No. You know, that's why Natalie is quiet. But you see, that's why we talk about unconditional love and acceptance, you know? And, you know,
Unconditional love and affection.
yes. And as we're
So
talking
it's
about this
very
part, you know, one of the things that came to mind is the importance of encouraging each other, you know?
yes, true,
Um, we
true,
encourage
true.
our friends, we encourage our children, we ought to encourage our spouses too, you know? It's encourage them in their jobs or in their
Yes,
profession or
true.
in their goals. That is important. We have to be each other's champion.
Hmm.
You know, I have your back, you have my back. I'm
Yes.
supporting you, you're
Do you
supporting
know
me.
you know how good it feels? You know how good it feels to hear your spouse say that they are proud of you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it does something for the ego.
it does. It does. It does.
Right?
And part of what Raquel said,
And
just to
yet,
add on
yet
to it,
Natalie and
is
Steve and Raquel.
Oh, 1 minute, Paul. Sounds like Steve is saying something. There's a little
Mhm.
delay, Steve. So sorry about that. Go
oh
ahead.
Yeah,
no,
man,
no,
I
that's
heard.
fine.
Go ahead, Steve. Go
No, I
ahead.
was just saying part of the journey is understanding that we're in a relationship, a covenant relationship. Each person needs validation at
Yes,
some
true,
point.
very
And
true.
for men, that validation is so important. You did well. And to work with the other person to get them to achieve what they have as their own personal goals. Because we all have personal goals, things that we
Yes,
want to
that's true.
achieve. And it is making sure you're unselfish, not just about you. Again, it's not
Yeah.
just about you, it's also about the other person as well. And getting out of your own shadow.
How difficult
Yes.
is that for
Hard,
the for men? For men, how
hard,
difficult is
It,
but learned. It's a
I mean,
learned
it is
behavior.
because, again, remember the world. Yes. Remember the world in which we operate as men, We are we are driven.
Hmm.
And sometimes because we are so driven, we forget everything else that is beside us and before us. And before we can become so into ourselves that we forget everything, right? This relation. One of the things I remember from our early days, Raquel, when we just got married. I remember when we got married, you were doing your masters then, and I still remember when I had to spend time helping you write your papers.
it?
Hmm.
I remember that was part of the growth process for us. I mean, I tell you, Steve, when I killed the masters, boy, I mean, I know, but why me write so? By the time when I started my masters, I knew so much that mean everybody have to write again.
And he was there with me.
Yeah, man. By the time,
we got
I
the
mean,
masters
both of us
together.
did our masters in counseling and psychology. By the time I got to do my masters, man, I had so much experience information that I just breezed through like it was nothing at all. But one I think that I always remember that as difficult as it was, and it don't mean that when we were writing some of the papers, we never did quarrel sometime, but it was part of the. I still remember that with pleasant memories from that. And even when I started my masters also, uh, I used to do my masters on the weekend. I used to go to school from Friday on until Sunday. And sometimes Raquel had to drop me either at school or come pick me up because we only had one car.
Hmm.
And I remember I used to look forward to, especially on a Sunday evening after spending the entire Sunday at school, just for Raquel to come and pick me up. And I mean, she did it without complaining. And that for me was, and so what I'm coming to is that these little things that we do for each other to, make our relationship blossom, it is what intimacy is about.
Mhm.
So emotional intimacy and communication.
I think
I want,
if you look at I mean if you look at Steve and Natalie, look at their picture. Look at their position. They're in alignment. They're in agreement.
them look like Siamese twin.
Conjoined.
Conjoined.
Yes.
Well, you see,
Um.
part of
Yeah,
the
so
vow was until
I,
death do we part, and that's exactly what it is.
yes, yes, that's
Indeed.
true. That's true. That's true.
Indeed.
Very, very true.
Um. Just to acknowledge some additional comments in the chat, Paul.
So
Um.
Miss
Someone.
Pauline Tate says, LOL, laugh out loud, so true. And Sashana Sparkling says, love conquers all. All right. That's true. When people really love each other, I mean, there's really no obstacle that you can conquer, right? And it doesn't mean that you won't have very difficult times because every relationship has its seasons of difficulty, right? And when I say difficulty, I'm not talking about discomfort, talking about real difficult situations that you have to go through, you have to navigate them. But we find that couples who invest in their relationship, when difficulty comes, they navigate much better.
And Paul, to give a practical example, we're at the age and stage now whereby we are in the sandwich generation whereby we have
Mhm.
younger kids and our parents are getting older. And
Mhm.
so what happens is that we have to divide our time to spend with those two groups. And sometimes,
Oh,
and
yes,
not
yes,
sometimes, if you don't have clear communication, then
Mhm.
your intimacy end up suffering because it is
yes,
so
true.
much to balance as you take care of your growing kids,
And
and
your older
especially when they're
parents.
about to become teenagers, and your older parents.
Yes,
You're right.
yes, very, very true, very true. Raquel and I are almost at that stage right now,
Mhm.
and we have so two sets of parents. Well,
Hmm.
Raquel's mother is still alive. My father and my mother are still alive, and so we have to be looking at what's going to happen when they get to the stage where they are no longer able to even live by themselves. And Timothy Timothy is at 15 years old or 14 years old this year. And so we also have to be looking at that point in time when Timothy becomes an adult. So all
Hmm.
and in all of that, your relationship has to survive, right?
Mhm.
Because God doesn't expect that we are now going to put the relationship on pause until we get over those hurdles.
No.
While life is happening in real time, we are expected also to invest in our relationships.
Yeah.
And that is what many of us miss. We allow life to get in the way.
Mhm. Mhm. You're right.
And I can tell you, life life can get in the way.
It does. It does.
Life
It
Absolutely.
can
does.
get in the way. There is sickness. There is failure in different areas of our lives. We all know of couples who probably would have been financially well off at one point in the marriage, and everything just crash.
Yeah.
And you have to basically start from scratch, rebuilding. Sometimes you have your children who, you invest so much in them for them to be going in a particular way, and you set all of the examples. They don't necessarily turn out the way that you want them to turn out, and you have all of that to deal with.
Yep.
You have family, all kind of family issues, and all of these things to deal with. But even in the midst of that, God expects that our relationships flourish. And Natalie and Steve and Raquel, that not easy, that hard.
No. Difficult.
That hard, man. Right?
Hard. Yeah. Hard. Tough.
But one of the things I always look at, why is it that God likens the church, his love for the church,
Hmm.
to marriage?
Yep. Hard.
God places his love for the church and marriage right beside each other. As a matter of fact, he says when Jesus returns, that he's going to present the church to God as a glorious bride.
Hmm.
That is, I mean, when you look at that, it's just God holds marital relationships to such a high standard, right? To such a place where I don't think there's any higher standard in anywhere else that exists than how God views marriage. And so he doesn't expect that marriages are going to fail and fall apart. He wants to know, invest in making our relationships important to us, invest in it so that he can present it, you know, as he presents his church.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, time is upon us, Paul. We're
Yes,
having such a wonderful discussion, conversation that we're not even aware of the time, and so
yes.
as we approach 9 o'clock in Jamaica, and maybe 10 o'clock for others who are listening, I think we had a great discussion this evening. Um, Intimacy. It only takes a spark, and I think as we wrap up, Paul and Natalie and Steve, you know, uh, let us hear from Steve and Natalie. How would you
No
like
problem. Go
end the
ahead.
co- how would you like us to end the conversation as we are wrapping up and you're pulling it all together? What's a takeaway for you, or what's that message, that sentence, that comment, that quote that you'd like to share as we pull down the curtains for this evening?
Intimacy doesn't just happen. It has to be planned. It has to be worked on. It has to be followed through on. It has to be a part of life, a part of your existence. It can't just be sex. Sex is a single component of intimacy. Intimacy is a process. And that process takes time, it takes growth, it takes change, it takes vulnerability. It takes you understanding your partner, understanding your spouse, and being willing to be vulnerable in that relationship. The more vulnerable you are, the more trust develops. And as trust develops, you become closer. And as you become closer to each other, you become closer to God.
Amen.
That's right. True. Very true.
For me, intimacy is being very practical. We have to continue to liken our spouses, understanding their love language, so to speak. So I'll put a little plug in here. As I said, Steve's love language is words of affirmation. And I don't know, Raquel, if he shared with you that he was selected for the Marquis Who is Who in America.
I saw it on LinkedIn not so long ago.
Yes.
Congratulations, Steve.
And so, just to
Not
show
so
him just how
long
proud I am of him, I just want to give him a shout out
ago.
on that because he makes me very proud of all the things that he does, not just for
Yes,
us as a
wonderful, Steve.
family, but what he
Wonderful.
does in his profession and as he grow in his professional life as well as his spiritual life and his romantic life at home.
Congratulations. We are very proud of you.
Thank you.
Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Uh,
Over to
as
you,
we,
Paul. And I also
yes,
want you to remember to share the email address, and you can have the final comments.
all right. Tonight has been a very, very wonderful night. Very, very interesting discussion. We want to thank Steve and Natalie so much for coming on and engaging us in this conversation about the second part of intimacy in marriage. We couldn't have done it without you. Very lively discussion, very down to earth, true to the heart, and we really appreciate you coming on and having that discussion with us. Thank you also to my lovely co-host Raquel. We have been doing this a few months now, and it has been going very well.
Yes.
Love having these kind of discussions with you. That we can, just tell people that marriage is still a very wonderful union,
Amen.
and it will continue to be a wonderful union if we continue to put in the work that it deserves.
Yep, that's
Wherever
true.
you have joined from tonight, we appreciate your company. Whether you have joined from Zimbabwe, in anywhere in the Caribbean, in the US, in England, we are really happy that you came on with us tonight. That you have learned something that you can use in your own relationship to grow in knowledge and grace of God, because marriage is God's business. It is God's institution, and He holds it very, very dear to His heart. If you want to contact us, you can send us an email, level up your marriage coc at gmail.com. That's level up your marriage coc at gmail.com. Send us an email with a question or comment, and we will join us again another 2 weeks from now for another episode of Level Up Your Marriage. Thank you very much, Steve and
You're
Natalie,
welcome, Paul.
and
And
we
that's
will.
me.
God
Bye.
bless.
Bye now.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best.
You too. Appreciate it.
All the best.
All right.
They can never take the love